Hey, it is. What day is it? It is October 24th, 2025. It is 12:30. It's Friday, and you know what that means. It's the Prospect Weekly Roundup, our weekly look at news and notes from around the country and around the world. I'm David Dayen, the executive editor, and we are going to have Maureen Tkacik on the show just in moments. I'm sure she'll arrive, being fashionably late, but that's just fine. And we are going to talk about a variety of things, but we're going to kick it off, and I believe this link is in the chat, about a story she did this week that sort of is at the nexus of both the ICE raids that we've particularly seen bear down on Chicago over the last couple months, and a familiar topic to Maureen, which is the sort of slumlording of America, particularly in the last few years as outside investors have gotten very involved in the multifamily apartment space. So it's an interesting story, and guess what? Maureen is here to tell you all about it, and she will be on here in just a moment as soon as we get that thing going. Um, hey,
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. We cannot see you, but if that is what we have to live with, that's fine.
No, I think that okay.
Oh, now we can see you too. Okay,
Here I
terrific.
am. Um,
Welcome to the
hopefully I don't have any.
show.
Is there a delay by
There's a
any
slight
chance?
there's a slight delay, but we'll live with it. Um,
Okay.
we'll make it work. Not a problem. Audio is good. And I was just telling the folks that we were going to talk about the story we ran this week of yours, which had and I usually the editors will take credit for the headlines, but not in this case. This was all a Maureen special. It is called "The Lost Dream of Obama Lago," which is a very nice portmanteau. Um, why are you talking about Obama in this context? This is about an ICE raid that occurred in the South Shore of Chicago. And tell us about sort of that whole connection, then we can get into the meat of the story.
Sure. So Obama, this is a well-known story to folks in Chicago, but Obama has been planning a presidential center, a
Yeah.
Dollywood of Obama of sorts in
Not a
this New York.
library, very important. Like the library is in some private area. These presidential libraries are supposed to be giving access to the public to presidential records and notes and things like that. But this is a presidential center with the library hived off somewhere else.
It was originally supposed to be a presidential library. And then at some point after the announcement of the Tiger Woods golf course and
Right.
various other projects that they were raising money for, sort of simultaneously, they scrapped the library idea.
Right.
Apparently they didn't want whatever restrictions the National Archives is putting on these things. It's really disturbing that they did that. But there is an Obama presidential library. It is not currently, I don't think, open to the public. I believe that Elon Musk maybe directed GSA to sell off the building that it's in,
Oh,
which is in a strip mall, many miles away.
right.
Um, but it was initially supposed to be the Obama Presidential Library, and then it turned into something different. And this was sort of at the height of Obama as lifestyle brand, and it was a very powerful brand in DC. I know, as somebody who comes from the restaurant industry, if the Obamas came to a restaurant, then everybody else would show up,
Right.
and you had your business for 2 years.
There's a
Um,
funny story this week about there was some restaurant in Georgetown that the Obamas, the Bidens, and three cabinet members were all at on the same night, and none of them had coordinated it. They just showed up. This is like the hot spot in Georgetown.
God, yeah. I mean, I worked at a really popular one of Obama's favorites in Georgetown, Phil Lamare back in the day. I don't know what the new one is,
I
but
think it's Melina or something with an
oh, are
N.
you Cafe Milano?
Milano, yeah, Milano. That's
Okay,
that's the one.
Cafe Milano is just that's been there for like that's an
Right,
institution. That is
right,
like classic DC,
right.
you know. But the
Anyway,
point is that
yeah,
so there was some I'm sure there was a lot of this huge sense that the Obama name and this huge tourist attraction would be able to revitalize this neighborhood. It's this
right,
the most beautiful part of the south side of Chicago on the shore. Um,
right,
Tiger Woods was going to merge two existing public golf courses into a PGA caliber golf course with, I don't
right.
know, you can imagine all of the trappings. And there was an incredible amount of excitement
Right. It was
around.
restoring this area. Like this was the Jackson Park. This is the site of
Mhm.
the 1904 World's Fair, which in modern parlance is famous because there was a serial killer that was killing a bunch of women at that fair. But it's in a book called The Devil in the White City. But it was this grandeur. It was the invention of the Ferris wheel was at this World Fair. Oh, 1893. I'm sorry.
Wow.
There was this grandeur around it. All the buildings were white. And it was Obama kind of adopting and restoring that grandeur for this part of the town. However, there's this huge disconnect that you talk about in the story between the this renaissance that Obama's trying to build, and just a few blocks away, these buildings that have fallen into disrepair, that have fallen into the hands of a lot of kind of smarmy corporate landlords.
Yes, and the South Shore, I mean, all of Chicago, I was really surprised because I have done a lot of work on slumlords. And this is part of this is a national um,
Sure.
problem that was caused by interest rates and interest rates sort of hiking unprecedentedly right after a massive bubble in multifamily, kind of shitty multifamily housing had taken off and brought the valuations of crappy apartment buildings all across America up to insane levels that are creating this sort of epidemic of absentee slumlordism in every city. But in Chicago, this is like on steroids. And the Obama Presidential Center was one of the things that made that neighborhood of South Shore Chicago so unbelievably enticing to these Ponzi scheme slumlord class because they could say, this is going to drive real
Right.
estate values. They were flipping uh, apartment buildings on the same day for 4 times as much. I found a mortgage, and this is sort of the building that was invaded by ICE and Black Hawk helicopters, where the really harrowing, the most harrowing um,
Correct.
incident in the entire ICE invasion Operation Midway Blitz
Right.
occurred in this building. But what we found, right, and so this building was very quickly sort of the the epicenter of the brutality of Trump's crackdown on
Yes.
Blue America. But what's so interesting is that every single one of the residents of this building has said it has been absolutely. You think this ICE raid was bad? Try
Right.
living in this building. Try
Right.
living in this neighborhood. Try
Right.
living in any building that has ever been, owned by any of these sleaze bags. And
And that's not just here secondhand. Like we had our colleague Emma Jansen, writing fellow,
right,
go down to the facility and talk to people there, and they said all of the things that you just said. And what I want to get into is that it was, yes, having the presidential center there was a factor in raising these property values, and the general kind of finfluencers who were taking a piece of apartment buildings during the post-pandemic period was also a factor. But the interesting thing is how, a lot of that wave is kind of on the verge of crashing. And the way it was sustained in these buildings in Chicago, you write about, was because of the opportunity afforded through a program of basically housing migrants in these facilities that were bussed up from Texas.
right. And that was, I mean, and this is something also that has been replicated in other cities, and we saw it in Denver and we saw it in
Hmm.
Aurora. Um,
Right,
there was a program that gave an initially, 6 months of rent to Venezuelan migrants, rental vouchers, and similar situation in Denver and Chicago. These migrants start showing up in December 2022
right,
in these two incredibly cold cities, and they're wearing
right,
flip-flops in many cases.
right,
And so the city's sort of trying to like ward off a humanitarian disaster. They find funds, that they haven't been able to find. And this actually causes a great deal of sort of frustration in the Black community because
right. Because we should
Chicago
say that South Shore, that area is like 93% black. Like
Yeah,
yeah.
it's 93% Black. The median income is about half, a little bit more than half of
Hmm.
Chicago's median income. So it's a very poor neighborhood. People are, living on fixed incomes, relying on these buildings, and increasingly they've all been purchased, flipped, abandoned, and when you flip a property, this is something that is like so obvious, but I've literally never seen any housing agencies, HUD, any regulators try to do anything about it. When you flip a building for an insane valuation, you are guaranteeing that that building is going to fall into disrepair. You
Mm.
cannot allow, you cannot
No,
guarantee
elaborate on that. Are you saying because it's impossible for the people who bought the building for so much to then put money, invest into
pay the
repairs?
mortgage, right?
Right,
If they it is invariably, what are they, you know what's happening with that money? It's just a very big red flag for fraud.
right.
And there are formulas you're supposed
Even if
to
it wasn't
use.
fraud, like you can't invest in the building and simultaneously pay a highly overinflated mortgage at the same time. And the thing that's going to give is the quality of the building. They're going to pay the
Yes.
mortgage and not the quality of the building, right? So,
And in the case of this particular building that was rated by ICE, we had, going back to 2006, there was like a $15 million mortgage
mm,
placed on this property back in 2006. So all that is basically when the neglect of this building, you can kind of trace it back to.
mm,
And
mhm.
it was ultimately purchased by a flipper out of foreclosure in 2018. Those guys flipped it in 2020 to an investor in Wisconsin, with tales of what the Obama Center was going to do to the neighborhood. She buys it, and then she immediately turns around and sues them for fraud and all of
Right,
the because she said they would only allow her to see two buildings, and they misrepresented all of these things, and they lied. And they got the brokers to sort of get in on it with them. And you can say, well, what the hell were you doing? Well, it's part of this. There's sometimes if you want to sell a property, and avoid tax paying, taxes on that real estate sale, you can purchase another property the same year. She had a
mhm,
very limited time. So she purchased this, had a limited time, and then, tries to sue them. Then she tried to sue Wells Fargo. What are the mortgage banks doing, allowing, because these guys flipped it for essentially twice what they paid. Um, you know, less than 2
Yeah.
years later.
Yeah.
So why are mortgage, banks endorsing that? Well, they're endorsing it throughout Southside Chicago. The Obama Center certainly had given appraisers a lot of leeway in terms of what they would. And what has happened is that the entire region of Chicago, this huge section of Chicago, hundreds and hundreds of buildings,
Right.
have just been flipped back and forth between professional sort of flipper Ponzi scheme type actors, um, and they're all going under right now. They're all bankrupt.
Mm.
They're all fighting. There's just litigation over so many of them. But while they were finding, and most of them had some sort of floating rate mortgages.
Hmm.
So interest rates really exacerbated this. The Venezuelans come in and they can pay, um, you know, uh, for 6 months, and they and there's a lot less, unlike Section 8. There isn't this massive waiting list. There weren't a lot of rules. And landlords were encouraged to try and join the program, even if their houses weren't ready for prime time, because they're really, there was so much, in these cold places, there's just like an incredible amount of urgency. And they were in general, charging like, you know 15, $1,200 a month for a really dilapidated, small unit that would have normally gone for 800, right? And the landlords are saying, well, they only have 6 months, and what's going to happen after that? And what
Hmm.
happened after that is that, like, a lot of folks stayed. And in this building in 7500 South Shore, it does seem like most of the Venezuelan tenants, and this is a little bit of a contrast with Aurora. In Aurora, Colorado, you did see a large number of buildings, not a large number, but, I don't know, five
Handful.
or
Yeah.
six buildings that were taken over by gangs who were
Yeah.
kind of extorting the tenants. Um, this was more a case where Venezuelans kind of moved in. Everybody was like, no, some people were paying rent, some people weren't, but they were all sort of working together to sweep the hallways and keep things clean, keep it
Mm.
from getting out of control. But there were some bad apples, and there was, a story just came out today saying there was a 911 call. There was more than one per day.
Right.
I got the police records for this location. I mean, incredible amount of crime happening, and that's what happens when, this is the thing. One of the subjects of the lawsuit was that the woman who purchased the building in 2020 said, hey, this building needs 24-hour security. Well, duh. um, and that's costing $15,000 a month. And nobody ever said anything about that. But they haven't had a security guard there in years.
Right.
So it's been, and the thing that is really telling, I think, is that while there was a housing inspection, while the housing inspector was there in June, while this inspection was literally underway, there was a brutal murder in
Mm.
the building,
Hmm.
right? There was a shooting. The cops come, all of the the murderers, because it was a guy who was basically shot, and then he was and then when he asked his shooters to call an ambulance, the another guy allegedly shot him in the head. And so the cops came, they fled as the cops were coming. The housing inspectors got right out there and refused to go back, because for their safety. But the cops never came in the building. So the perpetrators were able to come back, hide the body.
Right.
you know, the city is this is real institutional failure here. The city
Hmm.
is, and there's a lot of buildings in this camp in South
Right.
Shore. There's a Black newspaper called the Chicago Crusader. I was speaking to a reporter there, and he was in a building that was sort of that was
Yeah.
owned by
He was like living there. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
he was living in a building that was flipped from one Ponzi scheme to another Ponzi scheme. And he was able to say, hey, you've got to pay your bill, because basically what he was told by his building manager was, well, I don't think with just four of you living here in this building that the owner is inclined to pay the
The
gas
utilities,
bill,
right? The
right, the
gas bill. Yeah.
utility bill.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know if you want to move to another building where he's willing to,
Right.
and the guy was like, I'm a reporter, so I
Yeah.
think that's kind of messed up. And he started writing about it. And he finally got the alderman, Yancey, Desmond Yancey is the alderman in
Hmm.
the district. He never called me back.
Uh-huh.
To finally, acknowledge this, because this was a Ponzi scheme that had purchased 26 buildings in the area. There was a Ponzi scheme that was sort of like related by, 1 degree of separation, that had purchased, hundreds of buildings in the area, starting with, basically when the Obama Center was starting to get underway. And, this is a case where the lawyer for this real estate operation, that was purchasing all these homes in South Shore, and using the Obama Center and the Tiger Woods golf course, which I
Right.
don't think
Which is
was going
not
to happen.
happening, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But using that in their literature, in their pitches to investors,
Hmm.
um, this this operations lawyer killed himself had killed himself a few years earlier and left
Uh-huh.
all of these notes.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Please bring these to the feds. These
Right.
guys are running a Ponzi scheme. Here's how it works. Here is
Right.
who knows how it works. Here are numbers that you should call. And
Right.
please act fast, because they will flee.
Right.
Guess who fled,
Yeah.
right?
The
Guess
same
who
guy.
fled?
Yeah.
And 6 years later, right, they didn't act fast. The FBI didn't do anything at
Right.
all. And that was very surprising to me, because the SEC did eventually sue them at that point. The guy who had directed that particular stage of the Ponzi scheme was in Israel. And but like, I had not seen a lot of cases where there's this straightforward of a Ponzi scheme. Guys with a history, with a lawyer saying this is a Ponzi scheme, this is how it works. Um, Never even indicted, never investigated, very strange situation. But like, this is just what I found when I started looking at Chicago and slumlords, was just, this is really, really systemic
Right.
in their housing. And it shows you, this is a big reason that we have a shortage of affordable housing, is it's just been
Yeah.
extracted by, like, it's been used to pull cash out of. So
Yeah.
um
And
that's
it's
what you guys have been
really,
dealing with
yeah.
in
And it's really an underrated part of that entire story. But it's a typical great idea from you guys to take this kind of horrific event, this brutal event, and look at the systemic issues behind it. So I really enjoyed the piece, and I was glad we were able to publish it at the Prospect. Um,
It's
yeah.
also something like, there has been a lot of, this huge sense of, well, Brandon Johnson is very unpopular.
Right.
Um, and, is this city really, but they have band together. The city has
Right.
um, formed solidarity.
I'd be interested to see his numbers now,
I don't
after
think
these couple months.
I don't think that anybody, I mean, he hasn't, I don't even think that he's been that present. I get the sense from
I mean, I
everyone
guess he
I
called
spoke
for a
to
general strike,
was,
at the ice rally. But anyway, go ahead.
like, I've just gotten the sense that he is, that he hides, right? Like, that he's
Right.
just not, that he's a guy who hides
Pritzker's
from
been
this
more
stuff.
present than he has
He's
in
been,
the recent.
just as sort of corrupt as anybody, but he does hide from his critics. And I just get the sense that the Democrats in general are not particularly, Chicago is a place that, I guess, more than most of the cities that the right has sort of vilified. Chicago has always been even more corrupt than your average corrupt
Right. But it also has a
city.
history of resistance, right? I mean, going back to Haymarket Square, like so, and
Right.
I think we've seen just as this terror campaign has sort of unveiled and revealed some of these corrupt structures in the city. It's also shown the power of collective resistance, and I think that was true of Los Angeles too when we were the first city to really be on the front lines of this. You see sort of the culture of the city uh, born out in these moments. And we had a great piece that maybe we can put in the chat uh, from Emma, from who lives in Chicago, on just sort of the entire 2 month campaign and all of these sort of underground signal chats that find out where the border patrol or where ICE is at any given moment and rush to resist any kind of activity. The way in which ICE is systematically going after homeless shelters and how the city has responded to that. I do think that obviously it's terrible what's going on, but I think it is showing sort of the fortitude of the public, even if their government isn't doing a whole lot for them, or if it in the past has been historically corrupt. I think it's showing like their willingness to struggle in a way that is, I mean, we wouldn't want it to happen, but it's kind of inspiring.
Yeah, the one leader, kind of, one resistance leader is and has been for a really long time, is a priest in the South Side named
Right,
Michael Flager, who I talked to.
right.
And just to give you an idea of, he did not have he's this is a guy who was a huge cheerleader for Obama, but he didn't really have anything nice to say about Democrats, but he did praise Pritzker.
Hmm.
But to give you an idea of sort of there's such an appetite for fighting. He had Jasmine Crockett in his church last night to give, to sort of rally the troops, right? He's importing politicians as well, and but I do get the sense. I did get the sense talking to him that, yeah, there's other infrastructure in that city, outside the kind of normal political channels. But I also get the sense that Brendan Johnson is is deservedly unpopular.
Right, right. I mean, we did actually did a piece a while back on some of the reasons why from a different
Yeah.
Chicago correspondent. But anyway, great piece. Check it out. Let's move on to some other stuff. We
Other
could talk.
presidential construction projects.
Yeah, I was going to say we could move on to other presidential construction projects. Obviously, we witnessed this week the demolition of nearly a century-old wing of the White House, the East Wing. It was done, I think, in a rather convenient fashion during the shutdown, so that there wouldn't be, the ability for much outcry sort of within the executive branch or within Congress. And what I thought was interesting was this list of who is going to fund, because this was torn down to build this
T-Mobile.
ballroom. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, to build this 90,000 square foot ballroom is almost
Was
twice the size of
Binance
the
on
White House
that
structure.
list?
I don't think Binance is on the list, but we should just read the list. And I was thinking like we could do a story that is just
Corporate
links to
sponsor.
everything we've written about those corporate sponsors. But yeah, it's an amazing list. Um, uh, who are funding the East Wing? This new ballroom here. And I'm just calling it up now. Here's the list of donors for the $300 million ballroom. Okay, we'll start with Altria, which is
Altria.
Philip Morris, former
Yes.
Philip Morris. Amazon,
The least evil on this list.
perhaps, yeah, which is saying something. Amazon, Apple, Booz Allen Hamilton, Caterpillar, Coinbase. So here comes the crypto. Comcast, and then I'm going to stop and we're going to talk a little bit about this one. Jose and Emilia Fanjul, who you wrote about quite
Oh my
recently.
gosh,
Uh,
really?
yes,
That's not on my list.
it's on the
Oh, I
list
see,
of the
I
New York
see. Oh, it's
Times.
it's down here.
Yeah,
Oh
the
my god. Oh
Fanjuls
my
are
god, the fun.
more.
I think it's Fanhool. But
Fanjul. I'm sorry.
that's
I'm not good at
amazing.
my Cuban expression. So, I don't think we had a chance on the show here to talk about your history of the Fanjuls who really have been involved in the sugar empire for, more than 120 years in
Yeah.
America. And so maybe give a capsule summary of their whole world and what they've been involved in.
Well, I have been thinking about this because you see, I've been looking a lot at the war that so we're ramping up on Venezuela and
Right.
the fact that there is this sort of shadow government. I'm sort of wishing that we had a shadow government ourselves for but that USAID spent an enormous amount of money and various other sort of corporate sponsors that has existed since 1998 essentially, but has thrived and sort of is its own thing. Uh, when the Chavistas are overthrown, these guys will come in and reprivatize everything, right? And
Right.
Maria Corina Machado, who just won the Nobel Peace Prize despite begging Netanyahu to invade her country. And she is banned from running for political office because of she's participated in coups and again solicited invasions. So it's a rather treasonous bunch,
Hmm.
but these this sort of shadow government is so similar to the Cuban exile community that really coalesced around the CIA covert operations station in Miami that was established, I think, in 1961 called Jamwave or JM Wave, right?
Hmm.
And and I had sort of thought, I was looking into, I don't even know, I was looking into Epstein or the Coca-Cola cane
No,
sugar
I think it
thing,
was the cocaine sugar thing
right? And
because
Coke
it was,
did the cane
yeah,
sugar Coke. I think it just debuted. So
right.
Coke, went ahead with, bringing back, making Coke, great
Uh,
again. After,
Out of cane sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup. And of course, that benefits, sugar companies, right?
right.
So, yeah,
And the biggest sugar barons in the country is a family, they're often referred to as Cuban exiles, the Fanjuls of Palm Beach.
right.
But to my understanding, I don't think that any Fanjuls who are also related to this, basically the Fanjuls sort of took over the family from the Rionda family. There was this really, really iconic
Right.
sugar baron named Manuel, and he was also a trader, Manuel Rionda. They always kept Spanish citizenship, and the Fanjul family now they are still like Jose and Pepe, are Spanish dual citizens.
Hmm.
And back in the 90s, they were still just Spanish citizens and permanent residents. They hadn't even gotten US citizenship. But through this family, I understood. And of course, they were all over Jamwave, all over many, plots to assassinate
Right.
Castro over the years, this sort of permanent exile. And what happens, and this is, I think, maybe the best case for um, the notion that maybe we won't actually try to do regime change or try to start a regime change war in Venezuela is that the status quo of having this bogeyman down there in Maduro and
Right.
having these exile, lobbyists, with their now USAID doesn't exist anymore. I'm sure they've had to, figure out new ways of financing their lifestyles. But the status quo is not so bad for these people. They get to
Right.
sort of be permanent, they get to be permanent, sort of dissidents, and they have the romance around, and that is sort of what, the Van
Yeah.
Hools were huge funders of this ecosystem
Right.
of Cuban exiles, right? But this did not start with communism. What was amazing to me was that this guy Manuel Rionda, who was the guy from whom Van Hool, I think it was the Eugenio Van Hool was the grandfather of the Van Hool brothers. He was the favored nephew of this fellow Manuel Rionda, and he was really the architect of this entire dynasty. Manuel Rionda testified in 1902 before the Senate, I think, so a committee on investigations or whatever it was called back then. But at that
Hmm.
point, a lot of senators and progressive senators, or I don't even know what they called themselves, but they were sort of anti-interventionists, and they were in sugar beet
Hmm.
growing
Yeah.
states, and they were saying, hey, the Spanish American, did we just fight this war with Spain to get Cuba and the Philippines and Puerto Rico? Did we just fight that war at the behest of, of the sugar
Right. The sugar
monopoly, the sugar
trust. Yeah.
trust, this which is,
Right.
sort of German guys? And Manuel Rionda was there to say, no, 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 I promise you, the sugar refineries aren't making any more money. It's this money's going to the farmers. But of course, he's in bed with the sugar trust. Like
Right.
he was basically, business partners with these guys.
Yeah.
Um, and yes, it does seem in hindsight that it was the sugar trust that convinced America to, sort of go to war. And they were in cahoots with the Hearst newspapers, which were, doing good journalism about the concentration camps that these terrible Spaniards were, shoving their, peasants into, in order to, they had the brutality
All right.
of the colonial regime there. But these guys are, they're brutal, and the Van
Yeah.
Hool family, their sugar cane
Right.
labor
Their field
practices.
in the Dominican Republic
They
is like
have
practically a slave holding site. It's like a
Yes, and
plantation. Yeah.
and they don't they they mechanized their farms because they have incredible sugarcane holdings in the Everglades as well.
Hmm.
And they're, extremely, the RFK Jr., this is one little irony. RFK Jr. was like their biggest, their major bete
Biggest
noir
antagonists. Yeah.
back
Yeah.
in the 90s, because he was trying to get a tax passed that would have tax them a penny a pound of sugar that they sold, in order to clean up the Everglades, because they
Right.
destroyed the water systems there.
Right.
And but on top of that, right, the labor that they used before they mechanized the fields, they would import only Jamaican labor. And they would, if you couldn't work fast enough, they would just deport you.
Right.
And one day, some of these guys realized that they were systematically, stealing the wages of these people. I mean, that's the other thing that's just so unbelievable. You take these people, you pay them, whatever it was, it was $3 an hour. It would come up to, and then they were getting paid for 4 hours a day some days, for just really arbitrary reasons. There were whistleblowers who testified in this case. But these guys were, decided, okay, the rate, we're not going to come to work today, because it's just not worth it, like the amount of money that you're paying us, and a third of these workers are getting grievously injured every harvest
Right.
season,
Yeah.
because it's such dangerous work. Um, and so the Van Hools took these guys who decided to go on strike and just put them on planes, some of them naked, um,
Jeez.
back to Jamaica, and
Right.
deported them for, refusing to work, essentially. So
Wow.
this is like, this is the face of, immigration and, agricultural workforce. This is the
And
kind
it
of stuff.
and it's the face of oligarchy, right? And
Yeah,
and so seeing them show up on this list of funders of this ballroom that's going to be on the White House grounds and 2 times the size almost of the White House itself, uh, shows how this is as much about being a repository for bribes, right? And you see that as you continue to go down the list. So Google is on this list, and it's specifically the settlement that Google made with Donald Trump over taking him off of YouTube after January 6th. YouTube paid $22 million, and that's going directly to the building of this. So, that's an example of how these bribes get sort of funneled through. And another interesting one on the list, and there's a bunch of these, but the interesting one that stuck out to me, in addition to the crypto companies and the defense contractors and the tech firms, is Union Pacific Railroad. Now, why is that important? That Union Pacific Railroad gave to this particular ballroom fund. Union Pacific Railroad is trying to buy Norfolk Southern, creating the first transcontinental railroad ever that would be in the hands of one company. Prior to this, no company had sort of point to point. This is something Jay Gould in the Gilded Age really wanted and couldn't get. And now, it's in motion and it's in play. And so Union Pacific Railroad is giving this money. And presumably what they want out of that is approving the merger.
right.
And so
God.
that's, I think, how you see this thing develop. And there are a bunch of other names on this list, including the foundation that's linked to the New York Jets, which I think is hilarious. And in addition to Stephen Schwartzman at Blackstone, and just kind of a real murderer's row of the kind of people that are on top in the Trump era.
You do wonder it. I do wonder though, going like thinking about Jay Gould and the railroad oligarchs, what they would make of the state of our railroads. And then, especially
Right.
in contrast to Chinese railroads, there's a novel that just came out by a French train driver
Uh-huh.
that's, getting, very good reviews. He's a
Mhm.
very kind of literary. And I'm thinking about, I'm just reading about this book, and it's just like, it's an exciting life he leads. It's not like, the novel of an American, train rider would be like, well, I'm on call. I'm waiting for, the one locomotive in the region to get fixed so I can actually, basically they spend their lives just like waiting, because the trains are in such disrepair. The locomotives are in such disrepair. There's been so much money that's just been sucked out, and there's no colleagues. There's
Mhm.
there's one or two guys on these
Yeah,
incredibly long
riding an entire freight train.
derailed.
Yeah.
It's just
Mhm.
really it's just such a sad situation. Who is
Yeah.
Konstantin Sokolov?
Him, I don't know. I mean, there are some names on here that we should probably do a deeper dive on, but of course, the Winklevi are on there, and
Yes, the way. Yes. So
Kelly
is this?
Kelly Loeffler and Jeff Sprecher, who own
I
the
loved that.
Intercontinental Exchange, and she's the Small Business Association administrator right now. So yeah, there's some incredible names. I think we should just do a story that just has links to all of the things we've written about these corporate actors who
There's
are
also
funding the ballroom.
a theory right now, right? Like this is like and I haven't done enough delving into it, but Tether is on this list. Tether
Hmm.
is of course Howard Lutnick's
Well,
is
he's the banker for Tether.
Cantor
Like Cantor
Fitzgerald,
Fitzgerald is
yes.
the banker for
He's the
Tether.
banker
Yes.
for Tether. Very
Lutnick's on the
Tether's
list too, by the way. Lutnick
got
and his wife.
incredible like incredible reach in Latin America, and they've just purchased they've $5 billion in gold, and they've made some strange like agricultural purchases in Argentina, and there's been a lot of there's been some
Mm.
speculation. The Tether is the sort of like the backdoor recipient of this Argentina bailout that we're doing right now, even though obviously we know
Mm.
that
Oh,
Citron,
interesting.
Besson's a hedge fund buddy, but there's also potentially a
Right.
tether
Well,
angle
especially if
there.
it's agricultural, because what we learned this week, in addition to the what $40 billion bailout financially with swap lines and things like that, is that Trump has announced, and this is extremely unpopular, particularly in red areas, that he would quadruple the purchases of Argentine beef for the United States, and ranchers are flipping out about this, saying that this is an attempt to lower the price of beef, which obviously has skyrocketed in the last 9 months. But U.S. ranchers are really pissed off that they're saying they're going to buy a bunch of Argentine beef, and if what you're saying is like if you play it through, is Tether benefiting from that land being grazed on by Argentine cattle who then get shipped to the United States? I don't know.
I'm sure they are, and that is just such a like. There, I saw a TikTok by an old guy wearing a MAGA hat,
Right.
saying, talking about how angry he was about the Argentina bailout. I think this is really, a topic that um
Yeah.
is going to resonate pretty far, and it is a replay of like the Reagan administration, really
Mm.
they took a lot of the policies that started under Brzezinski, and the Trilateral Commission and stuff like that, and the Carter era, and these guys who said, no, we need to run a trade deficit because we need to boost Japan,
Right.
Brazil, all these allies,
Right.
in order to kind of maintain this empire. And so we're
It's the
going
same
to
thing.
we're going to
Yep.
let them all dump their steel on here. Fuck Western
Right.
Pennsylvania, fuck Eastern Ohio, and it didn't end up costing them electorally, but that's what our tariff regime is like really doing.
And
At the
certainly
end of the day,
It's certainly what the Argentine bailout is doing, right? I mean,
yeah,
they're saying literally, we are doing this. We are spending $20 billion of taxpayer funds because he's an ally. Milei is an ally. And in fact, if Milei loses the elections, which are happening very soon, we're out. We're not going
what
to
happened?
spend that
Yeah,
money. And so, to prop up MAGA like fellow travelers overseas, we're going to sell out, particularly rural America, soybean farmers who are seeing Argentine soybeans go to China, and cattle ranchers who are seeing Argentine beef come to America. We're literally going to sell them out because we have a friend in Buenos Aires. So it's pretty
it's
incredible.
an enormous. I mean, this isn't you know what's his face in Nebraska, Dan Osborne.
Yeah,
This is like
he's talked about this. Yeah.
we like this is an incredible opportunity for if
Yeah.
guys like that, and I know that they exist out there.
Hmm.
Again, that Trump was already taking a lot of heat from these folks over Israel, rightly. They're sick of it. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yep.
Um, this is like time to kind of carve out a lane. Of course, the centrists who've been we haven't even talked about Plattner,
We'll
um,
get there. We'll get there.
but
I want to
wait,
ask you. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
have a question though
Okay.
on the White House, because
Yeah.
I haven't done the whole like deep dive on like what's actually going on there. Is this like is this how big is this ballroom?
Yeah.
The stories, the
It's
things I've seen make it look like it dwarfs the actual White
it
House.
does. It's 90,000
That's
square feet. It's
insane.
almost twice the square footage of the White House. And a lot of presidents have done things on the White House grounds. They've added swimming pools. Jimmy Carter added solar panels. Barack Obama added a basketball court. They've added various other things. Harry Truman kind of ripped the whole White House down to the studs and did a full renovation because it was outdated. This has happened before, but it's happened in conjunction with the various standards and various processes that go on. Right now, we don't even have like blueprints for what he's going to build. And yet he's demolished the entire East Wing after saying he wasn't going to. And I think there is something visceral. I mean, you live in DC. I think there's something visceral about this city that, as much as it is a city of politics, it's a city of monuments, right? And to see one of those monuments literally just destroyed. I mean, there's this metaphorical power, right, in that it's Trump destroying the institutions of America or whatever. But I think there's something about, taking this bit of history and just, cutting it to shreds. That there's something. That's why I feel like it is hit home in a way that other cruelties, other actions have not. I just feel, I don't know if you feel that way.
Yeah, it's shocking. It's really shocking. I don't like it's I, I don't even know what's, seeing that I hadn't been paying attention to it, but just like the size of this thing that they're going to add,
Yeah.
and obviously the like rampant lawlessness of this, it is it's like psychotic, and you think this is superficial. I don't know, it is just like the visual embodiment of everything else that he's done.
Right.
And I don't think like
But
it's
hey,
another case.
it's time to build. Ezra Klein should be really happy with this. He didn't go through any permitting process. It's
You
time to
didn't get
build.
your shit. And yes, I mean, I hope I like the when you look again, like I did in Chicago and Aurora, when you look at the macro situation for affordable housing, you realize that like
Right.
building, is not right. Like it's maintaining our
Right. The
it's
existing
oversight.
stock is as important as the new stock. Yeah.
What
Hmm.
we need is certainly not less regulation, right? What
Right.
we need
Right.
is to ensure, we need actual regulators. And this is another thing. Trump just fired all the HUD's building inspectors.
Mm.
That's
Hmm.
very bad news, right, for
Right.
affordable housing. A lot of people, I mean, thousands of people in Chicago are living with no hot water for, weeks on
Right.
end. In Chicago, this is really difficult to
We talk
comprehend.
we talk a lot about housing. We don't talk about the quality of housing nearly enough. Okay, we have about five minutes left or so. So
Okay.
let's get into this Plattner thing. So,
Okay.
obviously this was a very strange week where we're all talking about the choice of a drunk 21-year-old's tattoos off a wall in Croatia when he's on Marine leave. But I think now we're starting to see this polling showing that he was obliterating Janet Mills at the outset of this, when you'd think it would be the opposite. Usually, when you have an upstart challenger going against a known quantity, in this case, a sitting two-term governor, that usually that's flipped. Like, you'd see that the two-term governor hovering at 50% and say like, oh, that's not a great position to be in because everybody knows her already. So the other candidate only has room to grow. Here it's literally flipped, like it's a 30-point spread or something like that for Plattner. And I think he'll probably take some hits because the media is never going to stop with this. But at the same time, I think it shows that the public is probably a little bit tired of the way in which media builds people up to knock them down, and regardless of what it is. And my view, I guess, is a little idiosyncratic, where I really think that we should be more concerned about building movements around ideas than clinging to individuals. I talked to you offline about how, we now see Seth Moulton turning back APAC money, giving back APAC money. We see like people who have accepted APAC donations in the past, giving them back and supporting limits on arms to Israel. And that's happening because public opinion has changed about Israel. And that has moved the politicians, because the politicians go to where the people are. I mean, I know that's not necessarily true on the Republican side, but on the Democratic side, there's still a responsiveness there that we're seeing in real time. And that's a more durable way to make change than going through this painstaking work of going through every election and trying to find someone who perfectly represents your interests and elevating them, rather than changing where the terrain is, changing where the ground on which we wage political fights are, and then forcing the politicians onto that terrain. So that's my view of it. I'm wondering what yours is.
Yeah, and I think that I totally agree with that. Of course, you've heard my line on Plattner, but I think that he is part. I mean, that's the thing. The reason that they're going after him is that he is part, along with he's the first guy who came out after Zoran Mamdani and said, number one, this is a genocide. We have to do
Right.
everything within our power to stop it and reverse it, and
Right.
and make life. This is something, especially as this you know peace, whatever, you know
Yeah.
sort of goes on. This is something that the people who care about Palestine need to keep pressing on, right? And the Democratic Party doesn't even really want to go there. But
But things are
Plattner came
moving.
out.
I mean, things are really changing, and it's because the not activists, but the Democratic polity. Like the poll I most recently read that said, would you be more interested? Are you more sympathetic to Palestine? Or are you more sympathetic to Israel? It was like 54-13 for among
For
Democrats on
Democrats.
For Palestine, and it wasn't just young people. It was like even among older Democrats, it was that way. So, I feel like for all the scorn and discomfort that students protesting on campus got, it actually moved the public. It really did. I don't think that can be denied. Obviously, it's the images that we saw as well. But somebody had to elevate those images. Somebody had to speak out about those images. Somebody had to move the public to care about those images. And so that's and if you look at the rest of Plattner's platform, uh, it is just as aligned with where the public is as everything as it is on Israel-Palestine issues. So it's on the affordability crisis. It's on the corruption of a new Gilded Age. It's on an economy by and for the billionaires. It's on healthcare as a human right. It like all of these things that generally are pretty favorable in public opinion, and particularly Democratic public opinion, are where he is at. And
Right.
that ultimately matters more to me than the sort of identity side of things, and who he is and who he represents. It's where it's the substance. That's what's important.
Yes, and with him, I think that one thing about Plattner that really spoke to me. I think the thing that was most striking when I first saw him come out of the gate was him saying that he spent all this time in the military, he served in all the wars, and it all meant nothing. That all of these wars were pointless. That they just made people rich, and that was that. And as sort of shocking and um, as scandalous as it might sound to the listener, right? To hear a politician or a Senate candidate say that, if every time he spoke to a veteran, they understood what he meant.
Right.
That even if they didn't believe, or if they believed in something, they still, it wasn't like it's not like that was an too hot take among veterans. Veterans, a lot of them feel that way. And I think that he's got like a complicated trajectory, right? And I,
Yeah.
obviously relate to that. A lot of people of this generation, people in their 40s and 30s right now, they're downwardly mobile. He had a grandfather who's a very
Yes.
famous architect who designed windows on the world and lots of extremely expensive furniture. Um,
It wasn't
and
always that expensive. My parents had a dinette set that was a Plattner that wasn't terribly expensive. And then we moved and they just sold it for like $20 or something. And it's now thousands of
oh
dollars.
man.
But yeah, I mean, I think, and we got to wrap up, but I think what this trajectory shows, at least for now, and maybe this will change, but I think what it shows for now is that the public at large is generally a lot smarter than the political system gives them credit for, and they understand the capacity for someone to change and the capacity of giving people that grace. And I think that's something that is ill understood by political consultants, that people give people allowances for being human.
And that, the other thing being too is that, he's had there's been all these videos of his volunteers showing up. Volunteers are showing up for these people, and a lot of them are really inspired. I mean, I really think that the key to getting those folks to show up is to talk about the genocide. I think that that's
Mhm.
activating a lot of people.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
he's also got a presence. He knows how to talk. He has a he
right.
has obviously been in some serious situations, and
And
they're with
that,
him.
yeah,
He's got a certain amount of charisma. um Fuck it. So I do think that, like, he's got, like, he's got a posse.
yeah.
They're sticking with him.
At
um
at least for now. So it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully we'll get some people up there. Mo, thanks so much. Thanks for your
Thank
reporting,
you.
and
What a
have a
week.
good weekend. What a week! And it will continue. We're here every Friday, 12:30 Eastern. We'll put this video up on the website. So go to prospect.org. Tell your friends if you like this. Have them watch it, and we'll be back next Friday. So thanks a lot.